Welcome to TBL Scope on the Big Lead. I'm Ryan Glasspiegel. We're joined by Bobby Burack today. We're going to be discussing Wilder versus Fury and then the idea of whether Skip Bayless might leave Fox Sports. Bobby, unlike me, you watched Wilder versus Fury and you came away with the apparently controversial opinion that Fury is set up to take the mantle from Floyd Mayweather as the biggest combat athlete in the world. Explain yourself.
Right, this was the biggest sporting event beneficial to a single sport since the night the Chicago Cubs won the World Series. That did wonders for baseball. It had the whole sports world talking. That's what Saturday did for boxing. So I've been saying for a while, even to people like you, that boxing's on the upswing. It's coming back, and people are always like, we want a heavyweight. We want a dominant heavyweight. We want a dominant heavyweight with a personality. We want a dominant heavyweight with a personality. That's the good guy. That's a check for Tyson Fury. This is the most dominant heavyweight we've seen in a long time. I mean, for those that didn't watch, you remember a couple of years ago when Brock Lesnar just annihilated John Cena at SummerSlam when he just took him? I mean, the whole thing was just just destroyed.
That was where Suplex City started.
That is what Tyson Fury did to Deontay Wilder Saturday night. And personality-wise, Deontay Wilder is like a mixture of Conor McGregor, but an underdog. He's a trash talker. He's electrifying. He's exciting. But he also has the baggage. This is a guy that was 400 pounds a couple years ago. He said that he had suicidal thoughts. He was addicted to cocaine. He didn't know if he was ever going to return to boxing. Now he's the heavyweight champion of the world, and he just put on a show Saturday night. If you're boxing, this is exactly who you want to be your face of your sport. And a lot of people say, well, Canelo Alvarez is the face of boxing. Canelo Alvarez was the torch barrier by default. When Floyd Mayweather retired, then unretired, then retired again, someone had to take that mantle. And it was Canelo because he was the biggest draw. But he's a boring personality, and I'm not even sure how good of a fighter he is. The reason he's not 0-2 against Triple G is because the judges didn't want him to be 0-2 against Triple G. Tyson Fury is better than Canelo in every single way. He's a much better face of the brand than Canelo ever was and ever would be.
So now we have to look forward because, I mean, it's been 2 whole days, so we can't really discuss what happened anymore. Let's go to what's next. It seems that the fight that everybody wants is Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua. How do we make this work between their respective egos plus Top Rank plus ESPN plus DAZN? What's the blueprint here?
Well, I wouldn't bet on it. I just interviewed Bob Arum on my podcast last Monday, and he told me that there's no shot this fight is happening. Now, Ryan, do we believe boxing promoters? No. Do I believe anything Bob Arum says? As much as I like him, respect him? No. I don't think him saying that means anything. But there are some complications. One is ESPN Top Rank working with DAZN. It's not as easy as ESPN or Fox Sports. They can simulcast a pay-per-view. I mean, DAZN is going to want the fight on their streaming service, which is $20 a month, and ESPN is going to want it on ESPN Plus pay-per-view because that moves subscriptions. So I don't know how they work around that. I would not bet on this fight happening anytime soon. I think we're looking forward is Fury Wilder Part 3. That, to me, that's the fight to make because Wilder, listen, as much as he looked outclassed Saturday night, he has a right hand that is the ultimate equalizer. It doesn't matter if he's down 11 rounds and a half. One right hand by Wilder can change everything, can put Fury out. That's why I didn't like his side throwing in the towel Saturday because as much as he looked hopeless, wobbly on his feet, he was still a right hand away from winning that fight.
Reflexively, it does seem like ESPN and Fox Sports, as big of media enemies as they have been for the last 5, 10, 25 years, is a lot easier to handle than ESPN DAZN. There's a lot of not bad blood isn't necessarily the right word with ESPN and John Skipper, but I mean, Fox literally just sold 2/3 of its company to Disney. Everybody who is an executive at Fox, because of that deal, owns a lot of Disney stock, and they're invested in ESPN's success financially. And I mean, they've just got a lot of reasons to work together. They work together with the Big Ten, they work together with the Big 12, they work together with the Pac 12. So they have other working relationships that seem easier bridged across than ESPN and DAZN. Do you agree with my read there?
Yeah, and I'd also just say again about simulcasting it. ESPN can put it on their ESPN Plus pay-per-view. Fox can put it on Fox pay-per-view. That doesn't work with DAZN because they don't have a pay-per-view. They put it on their streaming service, so it's a lot harder to maneuver that. And back to your point about them working together. What's the old saying in boxing? Showtime and HBO fought more than the fighters in the ring. I mean, these guys just didn't want to work together. They finally did with Mayweather, Pacquiao, and Mayweather Promotions, and Showtime with Top Rank and HBO. But those two didn't want to work together. For everything I've been told this week, I've been told by multiple people, it was seamless. ESPN and Top Rank. Joe Tessitore told me it was like one big network. He said that the entire ESPN and Fox crews were in a text chain together, and they were joking with each other. They know each other. Tess, Kellerman, Brian Kenny, these guys know each other for a long time. So it's just a lot easier to get done than DAZN, who's trying to do their own thing. So again, I think Fury Joshua is going to be hard to get done.
Well, and there's also the thing that ESPN and Fox made a two-fight deal with Fury and Wilder. So they knew that like this was going to be on ESPN's platform and a later one is going to be on Fox's platform down the road. I guess the only way I could see this working is there's going to have to be a trade of sorts involving Canelo. Like if they were going to do Fury versus Joshua, let's say that's on DAZN, then there would need to be some Canelo versus a top ranked guy on ESPN Plus or vice versa. That's the way that I can see this feasibly working, is if they can do an agreement across multiple fighters.
Yeah, and something else that enticed ESPN to get this deal done. This was the first fight ever to be promoted during the Super Bowl. My count, it had 3 commercials during the Super Bowl. The Zone can't offer that. Promoting this fight on Fox was a big reason why ESPN wanted to get this done. They can also promote on ABC, ESPN. So it's really a different ball game. But you're right. If ESPN can put a Canelo fight on ESPN Plus, then it makes sense, because as much as I just raved about Tyson Fury, he's probably still not as big of a draw as Canelo is right now. He probably will be eventually, maybe eventually, but right now Canelo is the biggest draw in the sport.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe if they did that, that there would be a way to get it done. I mean, also, do you have any idea what, off the top of your head, what Joshua's deal with DAZN is? Like, how much longer does it go?
I don't know, because some of it's not with the U.S. portion of the zone. Like Canelo signed that deal. Anthony Joshua, a lot of his fights are over in England, which makes the Fury fight that much more appealing. And by the way, about that fight, a couple of years ago, before Fury faced Wilder, people were disappointed because everybody wanted to see Wilder versus Joshua. Fury was looked at as the distance third guy. Now all of a sudden, he is the guy. Joshua versus Fury, to me, is a good fight, but style wise, Joshua would have a hard time taking the punches from Fury. I don't like Joshua's chances in that fight, nor do I like his chances against Deontay Wilder.
Let's move on now to Skip Bayless. So, Michael McCarthy of Front Office Sports wrote a story today about Skip's impending free agency. He's up in about, I'd say, 6 months. And McCarthy wrote that possibilities include staying at Fox Sports, going to ESPN and reuniting with Stephen A. Smith, or going to DAZN, who we just spent a while talking about, and reuniting with Jamie Horowitz, who was the original producer for Skip on First Take and Undisputed. What is your take on this story?
Well, as far as Jamie and Skip, Skip said the very first day of Undisputed, the opening monologue was the reason why he went to Fox was because of Jamie. So I don't think, listen, if Jamie wants to have him for a meeting, will Skip take it? I'm sure. They have that relationship. I don't see it happening, Ryan. Skip Bayless, from everything I can calculate, he's one of the biggest sports television draws on a daily basis. Outside of Stephen A, I think Skip's number two. Look at the impact he's had on FS1's ratings. I can't see somebody like that leaving TV for a streaming service that has no daily studio shows and is behind a $20 a month paywall. I mean, he'd be sacrificing arguably as many viewers as he did leaving ESPN for FS1. I mean, he lost about half of his viewership, if not more, by doing that. He would lose probably that by going to the zone. So
I don't know that he lost half his viewership. I think at this point, because you have to remember that Skip was on ESPN too. He wasn't on ESPN, and I think Undisputed is probably about 60 to 70% of the way. Yeah, so I guess a little less than half, but I think that like they're on a good day, their viewership is kind of getting close to where it was on ESPN too. But I agree with you. He did. I mean, if they could have moved First Take to ESPN, then you'd be right. He would be sacrificing about half of his audience. His First Take does outdraw Undisputed about 2-1. I don't see ESPN wanting a reunion with Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. has gotten a lot bigger in the business since Skip left, and I've just heard, I mean, secondhand about producers on First Take saying, oh, Skip is still doing the same show he was doing 7 years ago. And look, there's something to be said for playing the hits. You look at terrestrial radio ratings all over America, and just stations that just play music hits do well. And so I think that like that gets a little bit of a negative connotation, and Skip has built a really big audience at FS1. I think he's surpassed any expectations you or I could have had for what his viewership would be at this point. But I don't see an ESPN reunion happening. I also don't see DAZN. I did a quick like envelope math, and so let's say he makes $6 million a year at DAZN, which I don't think that that's what they would pay him, but that's what he makes now. He would have to sell 60,000 subscriptions at $100 a year to break even for that. And so I don't know. I don't see the platform that they have being the ideal platform for him at this moment in time. I think that like FS1 needs him because he outdraws everything else on the network. And if they lose him, it would be a massive hit to their entire day based on the way that lead-ins work. And so I think that the thing that makes the most sense is for him to remain at FS1. Now, maybe it'll be on kind of a shorter term deal. And if DAZN can build momentum over a year or two, maybe we're having this conversation again in, I don't know, 2021.
Yeah, I didn't address the ESPN situation, so I have a lot of people saying First Take and Undisputed are the same show, it's just different personalities. That's not true, nor was what First Take was with Skip and Stephen A. The idea behind Skip and Stephen A on First Take was to tee Skip off, have him give his strong opinion, and Stephen A react to him in an outrageous way. It made the show great. I think we all agree it was an entertaining combination. It was ask Skip a question, have him address it, have Stephen A react to it in the way only they could. First Take's not like that anymore. It's centered around topics that Stephen A can go off of. And I guess they want Max to push back at him. He doesn't do a very good job. Now, that might be more Stephen A's fault than Max's, but those two don't work together. You can't just put Skip back in that mix and tell Stephen A, okay, I want you to react to Skip now. So Skip would have to take the back seat if he returns to ESPN. And Ryan, the egos of these people, I don't see that happening. I cannot imagine Skip saying, okay, I'm going to come back to the show that was built around me as the Robin. I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to date you and date a lot of our audience, but it would kind of be like the mega powers in the old WWF of like Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan teaming up, like where, yeah, if they're on together, then they're just completely unstoppable. But I don't know, it might be like too much talent and too much ego for one team. And then to your point about First Take switching up the dynamic, it's not just the fact that Stephen A is the clear star now and Max a little bit takes second seat to him. They also rotate a bunch of other people in and out, including even in the A block. Like I've seen Marcus Spears or Paul Feinbaum or people like that in the A block, and they would have never done that when it was originally Skip and Stephen A together. So I think First Take has iterated a lot, but I do think that Undisputed is a very similar program to what First Take was before Skip.
Oh, yeah. I agree. Yeah, I would agree with that. And yeah, to your point about the rotation, and some of this has to do with when First Take was with Skip and Stephen A had said all the time this was Skip's show. He had the NBA, he had the radio show, he was all over Sports Center. He was still breaking some NBA news or giving some speculation. I mean, he's changed up now. He's doing the Sports Center show, still doing NBA, but First Take's his clear number one duty right now. That's his responsibility to do First Take every day. So I just don't think it's the same dynamic. You're right. Undisputed is like the old First Take where Shannon reacting to Skip. Yeah, I don't see that happening. I did see the odds. Now this is kind of goofy. Odds don't always mean a lot, but according to Bet Online, DAZN is a plus 150 favorite for Skip Bayless. DAZN 1, ESPN 2, and Fox 3. Now, I don't bet a lot, Ryan, but I might take.
We need to go make an account and go bet on Bet Online at Skip staying at Fox, because that seems like a slam dunk. Now, this should be where we conclude the conversation, but I do want to include one addendum to it, because there's an interesting wrinkle in McCarthy's report that Skip met with Jamie Horowitz for an hour in the middle of the Fox hotel at the Super Bowl in Miami. I can confirm that this happened through my reporting. And there's an interesting dynamic here, which is that, like, regardless of whether whatever DAZN is doing ends up working or not, I think that you can say, like, Jamie Horowitz doing something like that when Fox fired him 2.5 years ago, that's a big sign that he's back and that he's not on the sidelines anymore. And so he may not land Skip. I don't think either you or I expect him to land Skip right now, but he's definitely a player in the industry, and we can expect to see some big splashes out of him in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, they do have the McAfee show they air with Westwood One. I do think DAZN could eventually get a talent. I wrote about a couple months ago, Paul Feinbaum. I think there's going to, when Paul Feinbaum's contract's up with ESPN, I think that's a discussion that I can confidently say that discussion will take place. And if I had to bet, it's a good shot that happens. I hear people all the time say Dan Le Batard. Listen, I don't know if Dan Le Batard's leaving, but everyone knows he and Skipper's relationship. In a couple of years, 2 years, when Le Batard's contract is up, could he at least have a discussion about moving his radio show to DAZN? I think that's reasonable, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, there could also be like other things, like maybe ESPN moves him off their main dial, but they put him on like their Sirius channel, like, because ESPN has 2 Sirius channels, so like that they love him at Sirius. They had conversations with him about leaving ESPN for Sirius. So what if they did something with Le Batard where they put him on Sirius XM 81 and then also on ESPN Plus? So he's still under their umbrella, but he's in the kind of driving subscription modes for them. That's something that I could also see happening. I don't know. It's far enough away that I don't really want to speculate on it, but I do think that the team of Skipper and Horowitz is going to be an attractive lure to talents who want some creative freedom, and they're willing to deliver that. So it's definitely discussions that are going to be had. This has been TBL Scope. I'm Ryan Glasspiegel. That's Bobby Burack. We will see you again next Monday.